I read it twice. First translation and second, no, more. First translation, second translation, English. The first translation was a little bit Yekishe archaic. You know, good Hoch Hebräisch, okay? Like the language of Zweig in a way. And I understood, I read it in order to understand the world of my father. What happened there? What do you miss? And I understood parts of it because our orientation was always Berlin rather than Vienna, because we came from Dresden, so it was Dresden, Leipzig, Berlin. Vienna was an Eckfeld, okay, it was the corner of the world. I never realized the significance of the content and the volcano of the content of Vienna of the time. Second time it was translated recently, a decade ago, 15 years ago, in a much more updated language. And I read it, and already the European project is out, and the European Union exists, and the euro is the currency, and you travel from place to place with no custom and no border, and you see a dream comes true. And many, many times when I read the book and I quote from the book and stole ideas from the book, I said to myself, wow, it was not a eulogy, it was a prophecy. Because on one hand he eulogizes and he's sorry and he's sad for the beauty that could have been. The beauty of a bourgeois Jew who had a well-off life and never suffered too much, okay? I understand this privileged position of his, but on the other hand, the vision of a world post-wars, a world post-conflict, even post-chauvinist nationalism was a prophecy. So in a way, for a person like me, to read the world of yesterday is to understand the world of tomorrow. I'll tell you a little anecdote from my family life. We used to, when my kids were very young, we used to travel once a year to Sinai. Not that I like sand so much, and not that I like the seashore and swimming, I do not. But it was crucial for us as a family to give the kids the feeling that you can drive and cross a border and be in some other realm. When I go nowadays to Europe, I see the difficulties, and I see the challenges, and I see the fears and the concerns, and even the exhaustion of the continent. I see it in many places. And still I say to people, do you understand what does that mean? That you could take your car and drive from Marseille to Oslo, or from Calais to Budapest, or to Bucharest, or whatever it is, and it's in one space. There is something open which is beyond the geography and beyond the state's boundary. For a moment, which I do not know how long this moment will last, you have a feeling that in Europe you are almost unlimited. When you walk today around Europe, you go to central cities, you see people from the former colonies coming to the metropolises of the time. People from India and Pakistan come to London. People from North Africa coming to Paris. People from the Balkans are coming to Vienna. There is a conversation between the past and the present, and in a way it's relaxed. Yes, there are many tensions, there's many challenges. Yes, maybe the European project will not last forever, but for this moment, if there is something I can characterize the European reality of today, it is not just freedom. It's freedom with the aspiration for equality. And these two elements, freedom and equality, might eventually lead to the fraternity of the French Revolution. No doubt Zweig was not an observant Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox Jew the way we know him today. So the question of religion is in a way anachronistic, because it's judging the person of the yesterday's world according to today's parameters. But I will say that at a time, which is mid-19th century to the end of the Second World War, Judaism was actually moving towards two extreme directions. One expression of Judaism was very particular, very introvert, going into itself, ghettoizing itself. And the other part, with the driver of Judaism, became very universalist. Were they universalist at the Bolshevik Revolution, the capitalist money-making, the psychological, psychoanalysis, centrality of the one, or like Sigmund Freud, or was it Europeanists like Stefan Zweig? Many of them. Zweig, no doubt, was a very observant universalist Jew. Did he keep all the particular commandments? I doubt it. Let's take a moment. The Nazis are already on. Stefan Zweig is a known Jew, and I think that since 30-something, 33, his books are forbidden or boycotted or even burned in Germany. But he, under these circumstances, writes librettos for Strauss's operas. So who is this Zweig who writes for a Nazi opera Kapellmeister or Opermeister? What's going on in this relationship? On one hand you can say, well, Strauss knew his qualities, he's the magician of words. But on the other hand, in a way, Zweig was the enemy of Hitler because he stood exactly for an alternative concept of Europe than Hitler. Hitler spoke about 1,000 years of the Reich of the 1,000 years, which was actually ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. And Zweig said, no, it's Europe of all of the Europeans, Europe of all its communities, Jews included, others included. It's a different concept of Europe. And in a way, the battlegrounds of the Second World War were the battleground over what kind of Europe will be born out of the war and atrocities of the war. The one of Hitler or the one of Zweig. And from my point of view, Zweig offered Europe an early European Union from a very, very Jewish universalist departure point. It's explicit. There is a letter not well known, written, I think it was 1918, but I'm not sure. I mean, right at the end of the First World War, that he writes to Martin Buber, from all people, about his concerns about this new phenomena of Jewish nationalism, the Zionist movement. And he says, almost explicitly, he says, listen, if this is where the Zionist movement is taking us, give me exile. With all the difficulties and all the burdens and all the pains and all the prices that we pay for being exiled, I still prefer it over the moral price tags of the nationalist idea and the nationalist movement. And we have to remember, he knew something about nationalistic spirits from the end of the 19th century through the First World War and on. No wonder that we, the Zionists, did not really forgive him. When you go into your navigator and you put Stefan Zweig Street, I think that in entire Israel you find only one street called on commemorating Stefan Zweig. This is Stefan Zweig Street in Tel Aviv. That's it. No Haifa, no Tel Aviv, no Yerushalayim, no Beersheba, no other place. Only in Tel Aviv. There is one element which is alien for me. How do you commit suicide because a political reality? I mean, wow, it's too much. Walter Benjamin, him, so many others. So, yes, I was born to a privileged generation that never knew this kind of Second World War atrocities. So, And I cannot compare anything I experienced in my life to the demolition and the destruction of his beloved Europe. He was devoted to the concept of this new Europe coming out of the collapse of the Habsburg and the Austro-Hungarian empires and others. And it collapsed under the boots of crashed under the boots of the Nazis. So I understand the despair. But then I was at the Hendenplatz. It was the day of the liberation from the occupation of the Nazis. And I was sitting at the very, 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 very far end of the Platz. And on the balcony there was a beautiful orchestra and the mayor, and Vienna is rot. So it's a good color, okay? And you know it's the same balcony of the Anschluss. I mean, you know the history of the place. So here is the balcony, and here I am. And in between us there's something like 100,000 people. And I look around at the people, and I see handicapped that Hitler wanted to kill. And I see gays, and I see Catholic clergymen with the explicit white collar, and I see Turkish immigrants with scarfed women, and I see ultra-Orthodox Jews, and I see all of these people, and I say, wow, look what happened, what's going on here? We are, 7 decades, 8 decades after the Anschluss and the horrific philosophy of the race of Hitlerism and Nazism, and we celebrate the redemption and the redemption and the release from the grip of this racist philosophy. So we won. Hey Zweig, why did you commit suicide? You have to have a little bit more patience and see your dream happens in your beloved Vienna. Now when you walk today the streets of Vienna, I know Vienna hides so many things, and there's so many facades, and there's so many show-offs, okay, and there's so many buried skeletons, okay, I know some of them. Still, it's a right city. You walk the street and you feel parts of what might be of our life if every city and every town and every family and every church and every synagogue and every mosque would have been a little bit of Viennese, a little bit of Zweig. So I was sitting there at the end of the Platz and said to myself, oh, Mr. Zweig, it was too harsh. You had to wait a couple of more years. Stefan Zweig stands as an individual through his writings, forget about the personality, as the ultimate diasporist. This is a spirit or ideology or spirituality and ideology that Zionism and nationalism, Jewish nationalism, tried to eradicate and negate it. It was the negation of the exile, the negation of diasporism, and in a way, for many, many years, especially the first couple of years of Zionism and the first couple of years of the State of Israel, he was a negated individual and his philosophy was negated. But if you ask today in the street, when Ben Gurion is not with us anymore and the Alte Zionists are not here anymore, you ask my daughter. She lives in New York. So I'm an Israeli with a daughter who has a French passport and a grandson with an American passport, and my daughter is a universalist painter. She is the embodiment of Stefan Zweig dreams. So I will say that de facto, on the ground, many, many, many Israeli Jews living the legacy of Stefan Zweig without knowing there are Zweigs, without knowing that Zweigism